Every offseason, a fresh batch of players see their contracts expire, meaning they have the opportunity to hit the open market and potentially sign with the highest bidder available. With the increase in salary cap that we've seen over the last few years, the contracts that players are signing have been going up, and more max contracts are getting signed every year. Not only max contracts draw attention though, because role player salaries are also increasing at exponential rates, and because of this, even more expectations get put on these players. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we'll be looking at 4 players in particular that got paid a nice bag this offseason, but so far, their performance on the court is not up to par with what was expected of them after signing these big paydays. Before we start though, it turns out about 49% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player that we'll be discussing today that got the bag and immediately started to fall off this season is Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets, who signed a 5-year contract worth $172 million. I know it feels like I'm just piling on to his bad fortune because of the timing here, and I really don't mean for it to be that way, but you can't really discuss this particular topic without including him. When MPJ got drafted, the biggest reason why he slid all the way to the tail end of the lottery was because of worries about his injured back at the time and the potential for re-injury down the line. His eventual recovery and massive breakout season last year led people to believe he could be one of the next great players on the rise, because he was a scoring machine, converting at a blisteringly hot rate efficiency-wise. The Nuggets paid him based on his potential, hoping he would continue trending upward with the momentum that he built last season, but this year has been nothing short of a disaster. In the first 9 games of the season that he played in, he looked like a complete shell of himself, scoring fewer than 10 points per game in that span. His shooting splits went from godlike efficiency to worrisome, making just 36% of his shots and 21% of his threes, and then he re-aggravated his back that is now scheduled to get surgery on, and he'll likely miss the remainder of the season as a result of it. We were all hoping that his back issues were behind him after the year he was able to have last season, but unfortunately, after signing a max contract, his future now seems to be up in the air. The next player we'll be discussing today that got paid a hefty amount of money this offseason only to now be already declining on the court is Duncan Robinson of the Miami Heat, who got paid a 5-year, $90 million contract. Robinson went from being undrafted in 2018 to breaking out as one of the premier sharpshooters in the NBA. He played a major role in the Miami Heat's run to the NBA Finals in the bubble. He continued to shoot the ball at an impressively efficient rate on pretty high volume last season, especially from 3, and with this trend, he was paid on the high end of role player salary, because shooting is something that will always have value in the NBA. The problem, though, is that as a shooter, he needs to continuously produce at the level he was at the time he got paid this contract, because anything less and he becomes a detriment due to his weaknesses, as the Heat are learning this season. Robinson poses very little threat inside the arc as a shooter, making just 36% of all his shot attempts, and on the season so far, he's only making 33% of his threes, which is not only well below the rate that he was making them over the last 2 seasons, but it's also below league average. He's a poor defender, not really a creator with the ball in his hands, and now he's in a shooting slump, so it makes it even harder to justify giving him such a large contract unless he really turns things around. The Heat are playing well as a team right now, but they perform 8 points better per 100 possessions with Robinson on the bench, which backs up both what you can see from watching him play and what his per game averages show too. The next player that got paid this offseason only to start off very slowly this year is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who got paid a max contract worth $172 million over 5 years, similar to what Michael Porter Jr. got. SGA is a player that, in each of his first 3 seasons, he continuously got better and better across the board. The Thunder traded for him because they saw a ton of potential in him. He broke out in a big way with the team, and they rewarded him with this contract because of their confidence in his ability to be the face of their rebuild and the player they want to build around for the future. After putting up 24 points per game while shooting about 51% from the field and 42% from 3 last year, in his first season post-payday so far, his numbers have dipped across the board. He's scoring about 20 points per game, which is still solid, but his efficiency splits have dipped down to 40% from the field and 31% from 3, both being below league average. Additionally, he's dishing out fewer assists this year, so his overall production has taken a hit as well. Now, his inclusion on this list by no means is me saying that I'm giving up on him, because he is still very young on a rebuilding team with so much potential, but based on the criteria of this video, he's an easy inclusion because of how noticeable his production has dropped since said payday. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing today who received a hefty payday this offseason only to disappoint thus far in the year is Evan Fournier of the New York Knicks, who got paid a 4-year, $78 million deal in free agency. Fournier's days in Orlando got pretty overlooked over the years, but he was a solid scoring option there and as a shot creator for years. He got traded to Boston last season, but played a more reserved role during his stint, so when the Knicks signed him this offseason, the hope was that he would get back to his prior ways of producing nearly 20 points on a nightly basis. The Knicks entered the offseason with one clear objective, which was to improve their offense, because in the playoffs against the Hawks, their poor offense got exposed and they embarrassingly got eliminated in 5 games. The Fournier signing got mixed reviews at the time it was made, but Knicks fans were hopeful because he was a fairly proven scorer. However, we're now a quarter of the way through the season, and his impact has been minimal at best for the team. He's scoring only 13 points per game, fewer than he has scored since 2015, he's shooting worse from the field than he ever has at any point in his career, and on top of that, he's a fairly poor defensive player, which doesn't exactly help much in a system coached by Tom Thibodeau, where the defensive side of things is where the team's identity lies. With Fournier on the court, the Knicks get outscored by 5.3 points per 100 possessions, but with him on the bench, they outscore opponents by 8.2 points per 100 possessions, marking a 13-point improvement without him out there. He was supposed to be their prize signing of the offseason, but he's been an objectively negative contributor so far, which just isn't good enough, unfortunately. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below whether you think these players will turn things around to justify the contract they received. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.